Mr. President, I move that Senate File 1499 be withdrawn from the Committee on Taxes and given a second reading and placed on general orders.
All right, and you want to give a little explanation about it?
And I would like a roll call on this. The explanation is that we have a pretty high priority on helping our taxpayers. Here as a Republican, I voted that we would be giving the surplus back, and this does exactly that. And Governor Walz himself stated that he'd give half, and that's exactly what this bill is going to do.
Senator Ress to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would urge members to vote no, and I understand a roll call has been requested. Although there was no explanation of what the bill is, I would ask members to look at Senate File 1499. The provisions of that bill are going to be part of the governor's tax bill. We are hearing it this week. There is absolutely no reason to prematurely bring it to the floor. Please vote no.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Any further discussion? Senator Liskey moved that Senate File 1499 be withdrawn from the Committee on Taxes and given a second reading and placed on general orders.
Mr. President.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do have some more discussion regarding this bill, if that's all right with you. First, I'd like to ask if Senator Liskey would yield for a question.
Senator Liskey will yield. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. It was mentioned that maybe we're not exactly familiar with what your bill would do, Senator Liskey, so if you could let us know maybe as it pertains to the taxpayer, what your bill is seeking to do and how much they could expect to go back to them immediately. Thank you.
Senator Liskey to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my bill will give $2,200 to an individual taxpayer and $4,400 to a coupled paying taxpayers. So a married filing jointly would be $4,400 per household. I believe that this would be enough money to help in situations like covering the energy costs that are rising, other inflationary costs such as eggs. As we all know, eggs cost a lot more than they used to. So things of that nature, this would go directly to helping right away. Thank you.
Senator Duckworth, just to make sure that you know that under the rules that we're not supposed to have any debate on this portion of the motion. And as you know, when Senator Liskey stood, I asked if he wanted to give any additional information on it. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. And my comments will not be for debate. They will be to the notion of urgency, which I believe is what we're discussing. I think Senator Liskey's bill is extremely timely, and the people of Minnesota would agree it's extremely urgent. Just last week, and why this is urgent, just last week we passed a bill here in the Senate that the governor signed just days ago that impacted the number that was forecasted for the surplus. The number that was reported is $17.5 billion. That's after that adjustment for inflation has been made, which is exactly what I was fearful it would do. The real number that would have been reported prior to that adjustment would have been $19 billion, Mr. President. That's why this bill is urgent. We're passing laws here as a state legislature to artificially underreport the surplus that we're sitting on, and that impacts the decisions we're going to make for taxpayers and how much of that surplus should be going back to their pocket. And one more thing briefly, Mr. President, is this. As Senator Liskey mentioned, the last campaign cycle, voters told us, both Republicans and Democrats, please get up there, do the work of the people, but the one thing we're overwhelmingly asking you to do is return some of the surplus to us. We're fighting inflation, we're fighting the rising costs of living, we're trying to provide for our families, for our loved ones. We're requesting that you eliminate the tax on Social Security. Promises were made, Mr. President. Senator Liskey's bill would keep those promises. It's urgent that we pass this bill today, which is why I believe we should take it up. Thank you.
The Secretary would take the roll. Members, please vote. Senator Bowden, for those voting under Rule 40.7.
Mr. President, I report that Senator Pye votes no.
Senator Powell votes no. Those having voted that desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 32 ayes and 34 noes, the motion is not adopted. Members